So when looking at the eligibility requirements for an E2 visa, the first factor you have to look at is the nationality. It has to meet the nationality test. And by that, it means that there has to be a appropriate treaty of trade and commerce between the US and the country where the investor comes from. So if we're looking at an investor, say in the UK, we know that there is a treaty of trade and commerce between the US and the UK that allows someone to apply for an E2 visa. And then you also have to look at the ownership of the business. So if you've got, say, a UK investor, they must have at least 50% ownership in the US business to pass the nationality test. So it could mean that they might want to set up a business with a US business partner, so with another American. Well, as long as that American does not have more than 50% ownership in that business, then it meets the nationality test. So that's an important factor to consider. It becomes complex when you've got layers of different, it's a business structure with layers of ownership. Ultimately, you have to look at the owners of the ultimate parent company, and you have to trace it to the shareholders who hold the shares of that parent company. And so the nationality test is an important factor. You then have to look at the investment factor. And the regulations describe it as a substantial investment. And there's no threshold amount that qualifies a company for an investor for a substantial investment. And what they're looking for is proof that the business will be operational, that enough money has gone into the business to make it an operational enterprise. And so there was at one point in time, general rule of thumb was that for a small business, you wanted to swing the pendulum as close to 100,000 US dollars as possible. That rule doesn't really apply, and there's nothing in the regulations to say that. We've had investments that are half that much that have succeeded because they were able to show that they have put in enough capital to run the business. Now, we also look, though, at if it is a smaller investment, are there other factors to balance it out? Perhaps they've just signed a huge contract in the US and they know that they're going to be generating revenue immediately from that contract. So a small investment in that case could be justified and could be acceptable. Again, knowing that once they are out in the US, they're going to start generating revenue. If it's a company that doesn't have any contracts, then the embassy will likely want to see a bigger investment because they want to know the business is not going to fail within the first year. That there's enough capital to pump into the business to keep it afloat and keep it supported while they start building the business and generating more revenue. If it's a type of business that requires a lot of capital because maybe they need inventory, then a larger investment is required. Those investors just will have to find the capital to put into the business to buy all the equipment needed or inventory that might be needed to show the embassy that they do have everything needed for running the business. If it becomes more difficult, if it's, say, a consulting company where you might not need any investment or might not need any inventory or equipment. You could run that business with a laptop from a hotel room. Well, that's not enough to show the embassy that this is really going to be a viable business. So to the extent you can purchase equipment, to the extent that you can put money into a lease and other expenses such as professional expenses, there might also be intellectual property that you have that is yours that could be contributed to the business. So the value of intellectual property could count toward an investment. So you've got to look sometimes creatively at what would be deemed an investment, qualifying investment. But the investment aspect is quite important. Then you look at the individuals who are transferring to the US and what their skills and qualifications are. to determine whether they're eligible for the visa. You then have to look even further on and look at how many jobs are going to be created out of this investment. What kind of economic benefit, economic impact will this investment have to the US economy? And those are the factors, the key factors to consider for an E2 visa. There are a lot of fine nuances within each of those factors, and you do want to work with a qualified professional to know that you're submitting the strongest possible application.